The metal doors of the throne chamber slid open with a hiss that echoed through the vast hall. Jiwan stumbled forward, his hands bound behind his back with energy restraints that burned against his wrists. Two massive Valthyr guards pushed him from behind, their four-fingered hands rough against his armored shoulders. He kept his balance and straightened his back. Even as a prisoner, he would not show weakness. The throne chamber stretched before him like a cathedral built for giants. Purple light filtered through crystalline walls that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Hundreds of Valthyr nobles and warriors lined both sides of the walkway, their silver skin gleaming in the strange light. They watched him with eyes that held no pupils, just swirling pools of violet that tracked his every movement. Their whispers filled the air like the buzzing of angry insects. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a platform of black stone that appeared to float above the floor, sat Queen Valera. She wore armor that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of midnight itself, adorned with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Her presence filled the room with a weight that made the air itself feel heavier. This was a being who had ruled for longer than human history could remember, who had conquered species that humans had never even heard of. Jiwan's boots clicked against the smooth floor as the guards forced him to walk forward. Each step brought him closer to the queen who had ordered the destruction of 3 human colonies. Each step reminded him of the mission that had gone wrong, of the teammates he had lost when their ship was ambushed. He could still hear Hyunwoo's voice crackling over the damaged comms, ordering him to complete the mission no matter what, to recover the stolen human genetic data that the Valthyr had taken from research stations on the border worlds. He had completed the mission. He had infiltrated the Valthyr flagship, found the data storage facility, and destroyed it along with 3 of their most advanced warships in the process. But he had been caught in the explosion. When he woke up, he was in chains. The guard stopped him 10 paces from the throne and forced him to his knees. The impact sent pain shooting through his legs, but he made no sound. He raised his head and looked directly at Queen Valera through his helmet's visor. If she wanted to kill him, she would have to look him in the eyes while doing it. The queen leaned forward on her throne. Her voice when she spoke was like ice cracking over deep water. It filled the chamber without seeming loud, and every word carried the weight of absolute authority. "So this is the creature that destroyed 3 of my warships," she said. "This is the fragile human who killed 200 of my finest warriors. The species we thought too weak to be worth conquering, too primitive to pose a threat." She stood and descended from her throne with fluid grace. Each step she took made the assembled nobles step back slightly, as if her mere presence pushed them away. She stopped directly in front of Jiwan, towering over him even though he was a tall man by human standards. "Your kind fascinates me," Queen Valera continued. "You arrived in our galaxy so recently. You have no great empires, no ancient technologies, no warriors who can match the strength of a Valthyr child. Yet you fight like demons when cornered. You sacrifice yourselves without hesitation. You refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain." She tilted her head, studying him. "Why do you struggle so hard, little human? Why do you not accept the natural order? The strong rule, the weak serve. This is the way of the universe." Jiwan said nothing. He had nothing to say to this creature who spoke of natural order while standing on the graves of billions. Mirai's face flashed through his mind, his little sister who worked in the genetics lab on Earth. She had called him before his mission, excited about some discovery she had made in ancient DNA samples. He never got to hear what she found. Now he wondered if he ever would. Queen Valera's eyes narrowed. "Remove your helmet," she commanded. "I wish to see the face of the warrior who cost me so much. I want to see if your eyes hold courage or merely madness." Jiwan remained still. His helmet was the last piece of armor he had, the last barrier between himself and his enemies. It felt important not to give it up willingly. The queen's expression darkened. She gestured to the guards. "Remove it." The guards moved forward. One grabbed Jiwan's shoulder, while the other reached for his helmet seals. Jiwan struggled, but the Valthyr were 3 times stronger than any human. His armor's seals clicked open one by one. The guard grasped the helmet and pulled it free. The recycled air of the throne chamber hit Jiwan's face. It smelled like ozone and something sweet that made his nose itch. He blinked in the purple light, which was brighter than it had appeared through his visor. He kept his expression neutral, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on Queen Valera's face. But the queen was not looking at his eyes anymore. She was staring at his entire face as if she had seen a ghost. Her silver skin had gone pale, almost white. Her mouth opened slightly and no sound came out. One hand reached toward him, trembling before she caught herself and pulled it back. The throne chamber fell completely silent. Every noble, every warrior, every guard watched as their unshakable queen stood frozen like a statue. Seconds stretched into what felt like hours. "Everyone out," Queen Valera whispered. Nobody moved. The command had been too quiet, too shocked. It did not sound like the queen they knew. "Out!" The word cracked like thunder. Power rippled through the air, a physical force that made everyone in the chamber stumble back. "Leave us. Now. All of you." The throne chamber emptied in seconds. Guards and nobles practically ran for the exits, confused and frightened by their queen's reaction. The massive doors slammed shut behind the last warrior, leaving Jiwan alone with Queen Valera in the vast, purple-lit hall. The queen took a step closer to him. Then another. She knelt down so that her face was level with his. This close, he could see that her eyes were not just violet but contained swirling galaxies of color, as if entire universes spun within them. She reached out slowly and touched his cheek with one long finger. Her hand was shaking. "You cannot be real," she whispered. Tears formed in those strange eyes and rolled down her silver face. "After 50,000 years, you cannot be real." How are you here?" Jiwan stared at her, completely confused. "I don't understand." "Your face," Queen Valera said, her voice breaking. "I know your face. I have seen it before. So long ago that the memory feels like a dream. The face of the one who saved my people when we were dying. The face of the one who taught us the stars could be kind." She leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. "You look exactly like him, exactly. Down to the smallest detail." She pulled back suddenly and stood, wiping the tears from her face. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger but still carried an undertone of something Jiwan could not identify. Wonder, perhaps. Or fear? "I will not kill you, human," she said. "Not yet. First, you will answer questions. You will tell me who you truly are and where you come from, and whether your presence here is coincidence or something far more impossible." She gestured, and his restraints fell away. Jiwan rubbed his wrists, still kneeling on the floor, still trying to understand what had just happened. "Come," Queen Valera said, turning toward a door behind her throne. "There are things I must show you. Things I have not shared with anyone in 10,000 years. Perhaps then we will both understand why the universe has brought you to me wearing that face." She looked back at him one more time, and in her eyes Jiwan saw something that terrified him more than her anger ever could. He saw hope. The chamber behind the throne was nothing like Jiwan expected. It was small and simple, with walls made of smooth white stone that seemed to glow with their own soft light. A low table sat in the center with 2 cushions on either side. Shelves lined the walls, holding objects that looked ancient beyond measure. Some were technological devices covered in dust. Others were simple things like a dried flower preserved in crystal, or a child's toy carved from wood. Queen Valera gestured for him to sit. He hesitated, still unsure if this was some kind of trap, but her expression had changed completely from the throne room. The cold authority was gone. Now she looked tired, almost fragile, despite her imposing size. He sat on one cushion. She sat across from him, moving slowly as if every motion hurt. For several long moments she just looked at him, her strange eyes studying every detail of his face. It made him uncomfortable, but he held still. "How old do you think I am?" she finally asked. Jiwan considered the question. He knew the Valthyr lived far longer than humans, that their queens could rule for millennia. 1,000 years? He guessed. She laughed softly. It was a sad sound. "I was born 53,000 years ago by your calendar. I have ruled for 49,000 of those years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have conquered 27 different species. I have forgotten more history than your entire race has lived." She paused. "But I have never forgotten the year I was 23. I have never forgotten the beings who came to save us when we were dying." She stood and moved to one of the shelves. From it she took a small device that looked like a metal sphere covered in intricate patterns. She touched it and the sphere floated into the air between them. Light projected from it, forming an image in the space above the table. The image showed a planet. It was beautiful, covered in silver forests and violet oceans. Cities of crystal stretched across continents. But something was wrong. The cities were crumbling. The forests were turning gray. The oceans were becoming black. "My homeworld," Queen Valera said quietly. 50,000 years ago when a plague came from the stars. A biological weapon created by an enemy we never even met. It killed everything. Plants, animals, our people. Within months, 90% of all Valthyr were dead. We did not have the knowledge to stop it. We did not have the technology to save ourselves. We were an advanced species, but not advanced enough. The image changed. It showed a ship appearing in orbit. The ship was sleek and strange, built with curves instead of angles. It looked organic rather than mechanical. From it descended smaller craft that landed in the dying cities. Then they came, the Queen continued. Her voice was soft with memory. Without warning, without explanation. They called themselves the Hanil. They said they had heard our distress signals across the galaxy. They said they could help. The image showed figures emerging from the craft. Jiwon's breath caught in his throat. They looked human. Completely, unmistakably human. They wore simple clothing and carried medical equipment. They moved through the dying cities, treating the sick, distributing medicine. They worked for 3 years to save us, Queen Valera said. They synthesized a cure for the plague. They taught us advanced medicine and biotechnology. They helped us rebuild our infrastructure. They saved my species from extinction. The image zoomed in on one of the figures, a young man with dark hair and kind eyes. He was smiling as he helped a Valthyr child to her feet. Jiwon stared at the face. It could have been his brother. It could have been his reflection. That is Doyun, the Queen said. He was their leader. He was the one who found me in the ruins of my family's home. I was dying, covered in plague sores, too weak to move. He carried me to their medical ship himself. He sat with me for 6 days while the cure worked through my system. He told me stories about the stars, about the wonders he had seen, about the thousands of species who lived in peace across the galaxy. He gave me hope when I had none. She dismissed the image with a wave of her hand. The sphere returned to the shelf. She sat back down across from Jiwon, her eyes fixed on his face again. When we recovered, we begged them to stay. We wanted to learn everything from them, to join their civilization, but they refused. They said they could not stay, that they had to keep moving. They said there were others who needed help, others who were suffering. But Doyun made me a promise before he left. Queen Valera reached up and touched her own face, tracing a line down her cheek. He said, "We will return someday. When you are strong enough, when you are ready, we will come back and the Valthyr will join us among the stars as equals." Then they left. Their ships vanished into deep space and we never saw them again. Jiwon's mind was racing. This was impossible. Humans had barely developed spaceflight 200 years ago. Before that, they were stuck on Earth, fighting primitive wars with primitive weapons. There was no way humans had been traveling the galaxy 50,000 years ago, but the evidence was right in front of him. The recordings, the technology, the Queen's memories, and his face, which matched Doyun's perfectly. We waited for them. The Queen continued. For 1,000 years, we rebuilt our civilization. We developed technology. We explored the stars, searching for any sign of the Hanil, but we found nothing. Not a single trace. It was as if they had never existed. Her expression hardened. So we kept searching. We became conquerors because we had to become strong. We thought perhaps they only helped the worthy, only returned to those who proved themselves powerful. We thought if we built an empire vast enough, they would notice us. They would come back. She stood abruptly and began pacing. For 49,000 years I have searched. I have destroyed species who might have been hiding them. I have collected genetic data from every race we encountered. I have scanned every corner of space we could reach. And I found nothing. No trace of the Hanil. No evidence they ever existed beyond our memories and our ancient records. She stopped pacing and turned to face him. Until you. Until I saw your face and knew without any doubt that the Hanil were real. That they are still out there somewhere. That perhaps they became you, or you became them, or something I do not understand has happened across the millennia. Jiwon finally found his voice. We're not them, he said. Humans have only been in space for 200 years. Before that, we were on Earth, killing each other over resources and territory. We're not these advanced beings you're talking about. Are you certain? The Queen asked. She moved to another shelf and pulled down a data pad. She activated it and held it out to him. The screen showed genetic sequences, complex molecular structures that meant nothing to Jiwon. This is Valthyr DNA. This is the standard sequence for my species. She swiped and the screen changed. This is the modified sequence, the parts that the Hanil altered when they cured us of the plague. They rewrote sections of our genetic code to make us resistant to the bioweapon. She swiped again. And this is human DNA, samples we took from your research stations. Jiwan stared at the screen. Even with his limited knowledge, he could see it. The patterns matched. The complex sequences were nearly identical. Your species carries genetic markers that should not exist naturally, Queen Valera said. Markers that match exactly with the modifications the Hanil made to us. Markers that suggest your DNA was engineered, carefully designed by someone with incredible knowledge. She set the datapad down. You are not a natural evolution, Jiwan. You are the children of the Hanil, whether you know it or not. The implications crashed over him like a wave. Mirai's discovery, the one she had been so excited about before his mission. Had she found this? Had she realized that human DNA contained evidence of ancient engineering? Why? He asked. Why would they do this? Why save you and then create us? I do not know, Queen Valera admitted. But I intend to find out, and you are going to help me. She moved closer to him again, her expression intense. You said humans have only been in space for 200 years. What happened before that? Where did you come from? Earth, Jiwan said. We evolved there over millions of years. Are you certain? Or is that simply what your scientists believe based on incomplete evidence? She leaned down, her face close to his. I have spent 50,000 years searching for answers. I have resources you cannot imagine. Let me help you understand your own origins. Let me show you the truth about who you really are. Jiwan looked into her eyes and saw the desperate need for answers that had driven her for millennia. She had become a conqueror, a destroyer, all because she was searching for the people who had saved her, the people whose face he wore. If I help you, he said slowly, will you stop the war? Will you leave human colonies alone? Queen Valera straightened. She was silent for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. If you help me find the truth, I will declare a ceasefire. I will pull my forces back from human space. But Jiwan, understand this. I believe something terrible happened to the Hanil, something that made them disappear completely. If humans are their children, then that same danger may be coming for you. For all of us. She offered him her hand. Help me uncover what happened 50,000 years ago. Help me understand why they vanished. Do this and perhaps we can prevent history from repeating itself. Jiwan looked at her hand, then back at her face. The Valthyr archive stretched deeper than Jiwan thought possible. They had been descending for 20 minutes through corridors carved from solid rock, lit by the same strange purple glow that seemed to follow the Valthyr everywhere. Queen Valera walked ahead of him in silence, no longer in her armor but wearing simple robes that made her look less like a conqueror and more like a scholar. Behind them walked Yuna, a Valthyr historian the Queen had summoned. Yuna's silver skin was marked with age patterns that suggested she was ancient even by her species standards. The oldest records are kept at the bottom, Valera explained as they continued down, preserved in crystal matrices that cannot decay. Some of these memories are from before my birth, passed down from queens who ruled when the stars themselves were younger. They reached a massive door carved with symbols that hurt to look at. The Queen placed her hand against it and the door opened silently, revealing a chamber filled with thousands of crystal pillars. Each pillar glowed softly with stored information, creating a forest of light that stretched into the darkness. Yuna moved to a specific pillar near the entrance. This contains the records from the plague years, she said in a voice like wind through empty spaces. Everything we remember about the Hanil is stored here. She touched the crystal and images began to flow through it like liquid light. Jiwan watched as scenes played out before him. The Hanil moving through Valthyr cities, healing the sick, teaching medicine. They were human in every way that mattered. Different faces, different ages, but unmistakably his species, or what his species had been 50,000 years ago. They never spoke of where they came from, Yuna said as the images shifted. They would only say they were travelers. When asked about their home, Doyen would smile and say, "We are from tomorrow searching for yesterday." We did not understand what that meant. The images showed the Hanil teaching young Valthyr students. Advanced mathematics appeared on screens. Complex engineering diagrams rotated in holographic space. Medical procedures were demonstrated with calm precision. But there was something else in the recordings that caught Jiwan's attention. The Hanil kept looking over their shoulders. They moved with urgency even when they smiled. They were teaching as fast as they could, as if time was running out. They were afraid, he said quietly. Queen Valera turned to him sharply. What? Look at them, Jiwan pointed at the recording. They're not just helping you. They're preparing you. They're giving you everything they can as quickly as possible because they know they don't have much time. Yuna touched the crystal again, and the scene changed to the departure. The Hanil ships gathered in orbit. Doyen stood at the entrance to his vessel, saying goodbye to young Queen Valera. The recording had sound, and they could hear his words clearly. Remember what we taught you, Doyen said. Remember that survival is not enough. You must grow, you must learn, you must become more than you were, and when the convergence comes again, you must be ready. Convergence? Young Valera asked. What is that? A test, Doyen replied, touching her face gently. A trial that all advanced civilizations must face. We faced it, we failed. Now we try to give others what we could not achieve ourselves. The chance to succeed where we did not. The recording ended there. The crystal went dark. The chamber fell silent. Jiwan's mind was racing. A test that the Hanil failed. A trial that wiped them out. And they spent their last days trying to save other species, trying to give them tools to survive what had killed them. Before anyone could speak, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. Queen Valera touched her wrist and a holographic screen appeared showing the face of a Valthyr officer. Your Majesty, we have an urgent message from human space. An encrypted transmission requesting communication with the prisoner. Put it through, Valera said. The officer's face was replaced by a human man in military uniform. Jiwan recognized him immediately. Minho, Jiwan, Minho said, relief evident in his voice. Thank God you're alive. We thought you were dead when the flagship jumped to hyperspace with you aboard. I'm fine, Jiwan replied. What's going on? Minho's expression became serious. We have a situation. 3 days ago, archaeological teams on Mars discovered something. Structures buried under the polar ice cap. They're older than human civilization, G1. Much older, and they're not natural. Queen Valera stepped into view of the camera. Minho tensed but held his composure. Continue, she commanded. Minho swallowed but went on. The structures contain data storage systems similar to what we've seen in Valthyr technology, but more advanced. We managed to access some of the files. They're warning beacons, hundreds of them, placed across the solar system millions of years ago. What are they warning about? Jiwan asked. Something called the convergence, Minho said. An automated extinction mechanism that activates when civilizations reach a certain level of technological advancement. According to the files, it was created by an ancient race called the Architects as a safeguard against dangerous species spreading across the galaxy. But it doesn't discriminate. It targets all advanced civilizations equally. Queen Valera's hand gripped Jiwan's shoulder, her fingers trembling. How long? She asked. How long until it activates? Minho looked down at something off-screen, then back at them. The beacons are already active. They started broadcasting 2 weeks ago. Whatever this convergence is, it's responding to the signal. Our deep space sensors are picking up anomalies near the galactic edge. Something massive is moving toward inhabited space. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Yuna spoke quietly. The Hanil knew. They knew the convergence would return. That is why they seeded worlds with their genetic code. They were creating backup copies of themselves, hidden on primitive planets where the convergence would not look. Jiwan's head was spinning. Earth. They seeded Earth with human DNA. But something went wrong. We were supposed to remain primitive, below the convergence's detection threshold, but we advanced too quickly. And now we have triggered the same mechanism that destroyed them, Queen Valera finished. She looked at Jiwan with an expression that mixed horror and determination. We must return to my homeworld immediately. If the ancient records about the Hanil are accurate, there may be more information in the sacred archives. Information about how they plan to stop the convergence. There's more, Jiwan said, remembering what Mirai had told him before his mission. My sister works in genetic research. She found something in human DNA. Markers that don't belong, sequences that appear artificial. She was trying to decode them when I left. Valera's eyes widened. A message. They left a message encoded in your genetic structure. Can you contact her? Yuna asked urgently. Jiwan moved to the communication console. His hand shook as he entered Mirai's personal code. The signal took several seconds to connect across the vast distance between Valthyr space and Earth. When the screen finally activated, Mirai's face appeared. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep and her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. Jiwon? She gasped. Oh, thank God, I've been trying to reach you for days. I found something incredible. The genetic code, Jiwon said. You decoded it. Not all of it, but enough, Mirai said excitedly. She held up a datapad covered in complex sequences. It's not just random DNA, it's a blueprint. Instructions for building some kind of device. The sequences appear in specific combinations across different chromosomes. When you map them together, they form three-dimensional schematics. A device for what? Queen Valera asked, leaning into view. Mirai didn't even seem surprised to see an alien queen. She was too focused on her discovery. I think it's a weapon, or maybe a shield. The design uses quantum resonance principles that we barely understand. It would require technology far beyond what humans possess. She paused, but maybe not beyond what humans and Valthyr possess together. The implication hung in the air. The Hanil had not just seeded Earth with human DNA. They had encoded the solution to the convergence problem into the genes themselves. But the solution required cooperation between species, between the children they left behind and the species they had saved. They planned this, Jiwon said slowly. They knew they would fail, so they created a failsafe. They put the seeds of their solution into us, knowing that eventually we would advance enough to read our own DNA. And they saved the Valthyr, giving them the technology needed to build what humans could only design. The answer was never in one species alone, Yuna whispered. It was in unity. In cooperation, Queen Valera turned to Jiwon. Your species and mine have been at war. We have killed each other over territory and resources. But perhaps that was the final test. Whether we could overcome our differences when faced with extinction. She straightened, and in that moment she looked every bit the queen who had ruled for 49,000 years. I will order an immediate ceasefire. My fleets will withdraw from human space. In return, I ask that Earth shares this genetic data and works with us to build whatever device the Hanil encoded into your DNA. We have very little time. Jiwon looked at his sister's face on the screen, then at the alien queen beside him, then at the ancient archives surrounding them. 50,000 years ago, humans had tried to save the galaxy and failed, but they had left behind everything needed for their children to succeed. The Joint Command Center floated in neutral space between human and Valthyr territories. It had been built in just 3 weeks, a massive station constructed by both species working around the clock. From the observation deck, Jiwon could see ships from both fleets docked side by side, their crews working together to prepare for what was coming. It still felt strange. Just a month ago, these same ships had been trying to destroy each other. Now human engineers worked alongside Valthyr technicians, sharing knowledge that had been kept secret for generations. The cooperation was awkward, full of misunderstandings and cultural clashes, but it was happening. The decoding is almost complete, Mirai said, walking up beside him. She looked exhausted but energized at the same time. We've mapped 90% of the genetic sequences. The device is definitely a quantum resonance generator, but on a scale I've never imagined. It would need to be built in space, probably the size of a small moon. Can we build it in time? Jiwon asked. If the convergence arrives when we think it will, maybe, Mirai replied. We have Valthyr manufacturing capacity and human adaptability. The bigger problem is power. This thing would need more energy than both our civilizations currently produce. Admiral Jiho approached them from across the deck. The old military man had fought against the Valthyr for 20 years and bore the scars to prove it. When Queen Valera first proposed the alliance, he had called it treason. But even he could not deny what the data showed. The convergence was coming, and neither species could face it alone. We have another problem, Jiho said without preamble. Commander Kyungmin of the Valthyr Third Fleet is refusing the ceasefire. He's taken 15 warships and declared Queen Valera a traitor to her own people. Jiwon cursed under his breath. They had expected resistance from both sides but hoped it would be minimal. Where is he now? Heading toward the Talus system, Jiho replied. There's a human research outpost there. 50 scientists. Kyungmin sent a message saying that the Valthyr have never bowed to lesser species and never will. He plans to prove his point by destroying the outpost. I'll go, Jiwon said immediately. You're too valuable, Jiho argued. We need you here coordinating the search for more Hanil sites. And we need that outpost intact, Jiwon countered. Those scientists are working on decoding the data from Europa. We lose them, we lose weeks of progress we don't have. He turned to Mirai. Can you handle things here? His sister nodded. Sora is prepping your ship. She figured you'd want to go. Jiwan found Sora in the launch bay, making final checks on a human fighter modified with Valther shield technology. She had been his pilot for 5 years, had flown him through situations that should have killed them both. She looked up as he approached and grinned. Heard we're going to talk some sense into rebels, she said. Should be fun. This might be more dangerous than our usual missions, Jiwan warned. Sora's grin widened. Those are the best kind. They launched within minutes, their small fighter accelerating toward the Talus system at speeds only possible with the hybrid human Valther engines. The journey would take 6 hours. Jiwan spent the time reviewing everything they knew about Kyung-min. The Valther commander was old, over 3,000 years, and had won hundreds of battles. He represented the old way of thinking, the belief that the Valther were meant to rule through strength alone. Halfway to Talus, Sora spoke up. Got a transmission. It's from one of our deep space monitoring stations. She routed it to G1's screen. The message was short and chilling. The anomalies they had detected at the galactic edge were moving faster than predicted. They would reach the outer colonies in days, not weeks. And they were massive. Structures the size of planets emerging from what looked like tears in space itself. We need to warn the station, G1 said. Tell them to increase speed on the quantum generator. We're running out of time. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Talus system to find a standoff. Kyung-min's 15 warships surrounded the small research outpost, weapons charged but not yet firing. The outpost's shields were up, but they would not last long against that much firepower. Jiwan opened a communication channel to the Valther flagship. Commander Kyung-min, this is Jiwan of Earth. I'm asking you to stand down. The screen activated, showing a Valther with skin so dark it was almost black, marked with battle scars that suggested he had survived things that should have killed him. His eyes held nothing but contempt. A human, Kyung-min said. Queen Valera sends a human to negotiate with me. This proves she has gone mad. The Valther do not negotiate with prey animals. The Queen sent me because I'm the only one who might understand why you're doing this. Jiwan replied calmly. You're afraid. Not of humans, but of what working with us means. It means admitting that the Valther way, the path of conquest and domination, might be wrong. We are not wrong, Kyung-min snarled. We are strong. Strength is the only truth in this universe. The weak serve or die. This is natural law. Natural law didn't save you from the plague 50,000 years ago, Jiwan countered. The Hanil saved you through cooperation and compassion. They gave you everything you needed to survive, asking nothing in return. And the first thing you did after they left was become conquerors. You twisted their gift into a weapon. They abandoned us, Kyung-min roared. They made promises and vanished. We searched for millennia and found nothing. So yes, we became strong. Strong enough that we would never need saving again. Strong enough that no one could abandon us because no one could stand against us. Jiwan felt a surge of understanding. Kyung-min was not just a warrior. He was someone who had been hurt by abandonment and had armored himself in violence to prevent it from happening again. They didn't abandon you, Jiwan said quietly. They died. They died trying to save other species from the same threat that's coming for us now. The Convergence destroyed the Hanil despite all their technology and knowledge. But before they died, they left behind pieces of a solution. They seeded Earth with humans who would carry the blueprint in their DNA. They saved the Valther who would have the technology to build it. They created a scenario where our species would have to work together to survive. Lies, Kyung-min spat. Human manipulation. Then explain this, Jiwan said, sending him the data from the deep space monitoring stations. Those structures appearing at the galactic edge. That's the Convergence. It's real, it's coming, and it will destroy everything in its path. The only chance we have is the device encoded in human DNA, built with Valther technology. Separately, we die. Together, we might survive. Kyung-min studied the data for a long moment. When he looked up, his expression had shifted from anger to something else. Fear, but also a warrior's recognition of an enemy worth fighting. Even if this is true, he said slowly, how do I know the device will work? How do I know this is not human trickery to make us lower our defenses? You don't, Jiwan admitted. You have to trust. Just like the Hanil trusted you 50,000 years ago when they came to your dying world. They didn't know if you would use their gifts wisely. They helped you anyway because that's what you do when you're strong. True strength is not about domination. It's about lifting others up. The communication fell silent. Ji-won could see Kyung-min wrestling with a lifetime of beliefs, trying to reconcile what he had always known with what he was being asked to accept. Finally, Sora spoke up. "Commander, I'm human. I've fought Valthyr in 3 different systems. You've killed people I cared about, but right now, I'm more afraid of what's coming from beyond the galaxy than I am of you, and if we don't work together, we're all going to die, including the Valthyr you think you're protecting by refusing the alliance." Kyung-min looked at her, then at Ji-won, then at his own warriors visible on the bridge behind him. They were watching him, waiting for orders. These were soldiers who had followed him through countless battles. What he decided now would shape not just his fate, but theirs. "If I agree to the ceasefire," Kyung-min said slowly, "I want to see this device. I want to watch it being built. And if I suspect any treachery, any hint that humans are using this crisis to weaken us, I will resume the war myself." "That's fair," Ji-won agreed. "Come to the joint station. See how both species are working together. Judge for yourself whether this is real." Kyung-min was about to respond when every ship's alarm began screaming at once. Sora pulled up the sensor data and her face went pale. "Convergence probes," she said. 3 of them just emerged from hyperspace. They're in the system." On the view screen, 3 objects appeared. They were smooth and black, perfect spheres that seemed to absorb all light that touched them. They moved with impossible grace toward the nearest planet, completely ignoring the ships around them. "All vessels do not engage," Ji-won ordered. "We need to see what they do." The probes reached the planet, a dead rock with no atmosphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light erupted from the probes, beams of pure white energy that struck the planet's surface. The planet began to dissolve. Not explode, not shatter, but simply cease to exist, breaking down into its component atoms that scattered into space. In less than 2 minutes, a planet that had existed for billions of years was gone. The communication channels exploded with panicked voices from both human and Valthyr ships. But Kyung-min's voice cut through the chaos, calm and certain. The joint fleet gathered in the Kepler system, surrounding the half-built quantum resonance generator that hung in space like an incomplete moon. Ships from both species worked frantically on the construction, welding massive components together with beams of focused energy. They had been building for 5 days straight. The device was 60% complete. The convergence probes had already destroyed 15 systems. Billions were dead. Evacuation ships fled ahead of the advancing probes, carrying refugees to the few remaining safe zones. But there were no truly safe zones anymore. The probes were spreading like a plague, appearing faster than anyone could track. Ji-won stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching the construction through the viewport. Beside him stood Queen Valera, Admiral Ji-ho, Commander Kyung-min, and Hyun-woo, who had arrived with reinforcements from Earth. They made an unlikely team, but necessity had forged them into something resembling unity. "The device is structurally complete enough to test." Mireille's voice came through the comm system. She was in the generator's core, coordinating with Valthyr engineers, but we still have the power problem. Even with every reactor we have online, we're only at 40% of required capacity. "Then we find more power," Valera said firmly. "Strip it from the ships if necessary." "That would leave the fleet defenseless," Kyung-min objected. "We need those ships to protect the generator while it charges." "We need the generator online," Valera countered. "Ships mean nothing if we cannot activate the device." Before the argument could continue, the sensor station erupted in frantic beeping. A young human technician turned to them, his face pale. Multiple convergent structures emerging from hyperspace. Not probes, something much larger. The view screen shifted to show what the sensors detected. 3 massive objects were materializing at the edge of the system. They were kilometers across, perfect geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Around each structure, space itself seemed to bend and warp. "What are those?" Hyun-woo asked. Yuna, who had been studying Hanil data, spoke up from her station. "Convergence nexuses. According to the ancient records, these are the core units. The probes were just scouts. These are the exterminators. They can destroy entire star systems in hours." "How long until they reach us?" Ji-ho demanded. "At current speed, 4 hours. The technician replied. "They're moving faster than anything we've seen before." Jiwan turned to Mirai's channel. Can we charge the generator in 4 hours with what we have? There was a long pause. No, we need 6 hours minimum. Even then, we're not certain it will work. The Hanil blueprint is incomplete. We've had to improvise on some components. Then we buy time, Kyungmin said. He straightened, his warrior nature taking over. The fleet will engage the nexuses. We will slow them down. That's suicide, Jiho said bluntly. Those things destroyed planets. What chance do we have? None, Kyungmin agreed. But we only need to slow them, not stop them. Every minute we hold them back is a minute closer to completion. He looked at Queen Valera. You should remain here, my queen. Command the evacuation if we fail. Valera's eyes flashed. I have ruled for 49,000 years, Commander. I did not survive that long by hiding while others fought my battles. She moved toward the door. I will lead the fleet personally. You will remain and coordinate the defense. Your Majesty, I cannot allow— That was not a request, Valera said. Her voice carried the full weight of her authority. You are needed here to ensure the generator is completed if I fall. I am needed at the front to show our people that I stand with them. She paused at the doorway. Besides, I made a promise 50,000 years ago. I told Doyen I would make the Valthyr worthy of the gift they gave us. I intend to keep that promise even if it costs me my life. She left before anyone could argue further. Moments later, they watched her board the Valthyr flagship, its engines flaring to life as it moved to join the defensive formation. Jiwan looked at the convergence nexuses advancing across the view screen. Then he looked at the incomplete generator hanging in space. Then he made a decision. I'm going with her, he said. Jiwan, no, Mirai's voice crackled through the comm. We need you alive. You're the link between our species. We have dozens of links now, Jiwan replied. People from both sides working together. But Valera is going into battle alone. Leading a fight for all of us. Someone needs to stand beside her. Someone who represents what we're trying to build. Yenwu grabbed his shoulder. Brother, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do, Jiwan said. He looked at his old commander and friend. 50,000 years ago, the Hanil faced this same threat. They went into battle knowing they would lose but fighting anyway to save others. If I'm really their descendant, if I carry Doyen's face, then I need to honor that legacy. Before Hyunwoo could respond, Sora appeared in the doorway. Figured you'd want to do something stupid, she said with her familiar grin. Ship's ready. They launched 5 minutes later, their fighter streaking across space to catch up with the fleet. 200 ships, human and Valthyr, arranged in defensive formations. They looked so small against the massive convergence nexuses that continued their inexorable advance. Jiwan's fighter docked with Queen Valera's flagship. He made his way to the bridge where the Queen stood surrounded by her command staff. She turned as he entered, surprise crossing her face. You should not be here, she said. Neither should you, Jiwan replied. But here we are. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Very well. Stand beside me then, child of the Hanil. Let us face this together as your ancestors would have wanted. The fleet moved forward to meet the nexuses. As they approached, the true scale of the enemy became clear. Each nexus was the size of a small moon, their surfaces covered in symbols that shifted and changed. Energy crackled across their hulls, building to devastating levels. All ships fire at will, Valera commanded. The fleet opened fire. Thousands of weapons blazed, missiles and energy beams striking the nexuses from every angle. For a moment it seemed to work. One nexus's shields flickered and wavered. Then they fired back. 3 beams of pure white energy lanced out from the nexuses. Each beam struck a cluster of ships. Jiwan watched in horror as vessels simply ceased to exist, erased from reality in an instant. 20 ships gone in seconds, evasive maneuvers, Valera ordered.
Keep them firing!
Every shot they waste on us is power they cannot use on the generator. The fleet scattered, making themselves harder targets. The nexuses tracked them with inhuman precision, their beams cutting through space. More ships died. Human and Valthyr crews fought and died together, buying minutes with their lives. On the generator, Mirai's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. We're at 70% charge. 3 more hours, 3 hours. Jiwan looked at the tactical display. They had lost 40 ships already. At this rate, the fleet would be gone in 90 minutes. We need more power, he said suddenly. For the generator, what if we give it the reactors from destroyed ships? They're still functional even if the ships are gone. Those reactors would need to be manually connected, one of the Valthier engineers replied. Someone would have to fly out there under fire and physically link them to the generator's core. Then I'll do it, Sora said from their fighter. I can fly through anything. Sora, no, Jiwan started, but she cut him off. We talked about this, remember? Sora said. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. About what we'd be willing to give for something that mattered. This matters, Jiwan. This is everything. Before he could argue, Sora's fighter detached from the flagship and accelerated toward the nearest destroyed ship. She maneuvered around Nexus beams with impossible skill, grabbed the reactor from the wreckage and flew toward the generator. The Nexuses noticed. Two of them turned their weapons toward her small fighter. Beams converged on her position. I'm almost there, Sora said. Tell my mom I love her. And Jiwan? It's been an honor flying with you. Her fighter reached the generator. She connected the reactor successfully. Power levels jumped 10%. Then the beams found her. Jiwan watched Sora's ship dissolve into atoms. His friend, his pilot, the person who had saved his life a dozen times. Gone. 80% power, Mirai reported quietly. 2 more hours, the fleet fought on. More ships died. More reactors were salvaged by volunteers who flew into certain death to give the generator the power it needed. Human and Valthier pilots alike, sacrificing themselves for a cause that transcended species. 90% power, 1 hour remaining. The fleet was down to 40 ships. Then one of the Nexuses changed course. It began moving directly toward the generator, ignoring the fleet's attacks. It knows, Valera said. It recognizes what we are building. It will destroy the generator before we can complete it. Then we stop it, Jiwan said. He turned to the communications officer. Contact all remaining ships. We need to form a barrier between that Nexus and the generator. Use our own shields to absorb its weapons. That will drain our shields completely. Kyungmin's voice came through from the command station. You will be defenseless. We only need to hold for 1 hour, Jiwan replied. After that, either the generator works or nothing matters anyway. The remaining ships moved into position, creating a wall between the advancing Nexus and the generator. Queen Valira's flagship took point, its shields at maximum as the Nexus weapon charged.